Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Reserved Investments. So several weeks ago, I uploaded a video to YouTube entitled Collectibles, What is Vintage and Why Has the Definition Changed Over the Years? Now, for review, for anybody that wants to watch that video, I'm going to link it in the video description below. But the core crux of that video was to simply define what is vintage as it stands now and how has that definition changed over the years, over the decades even, since eBay, the internet, and e-commerce came into existence. Now, in the comment section of that video, I got a lot of questions then asking me to define terms like retro and classic. Because a lot of you guys out there, and gals to be fair, that are involved in video games, or maybe you're involved in the toy market, whether it be the vintage toy market or even the modern era toy market, you will sometimes hear these terms used interchangeably. For instance, if you log on to any video game collecting forum, you're going to have somebody refer to a video game as a vintage video game. Somebody else is going to refer to that same video game as a retro video game. And somebody else, again, still is going to possibly refer to that game as being a classic video game. Now, what is the correct term to use? Well, we already defined the term vintage in the video I just referenced, that again will be in the video description below. So now we have to define the terms retro and classic. All is what retro is imitative of items from the past. So let me use this as an example. If you've ever played the game Super Mario Bros. Wonder on the Nintendo Switch, believe it or not, that's a retro video game. Whereas Super Mario Brothers, the original, or Super Mario Brothers 2, Super Mario Brothers 3, that would be considered a vintage video game. Do you see the difference? The reason why we can consider Super Mario Brothers Wonder to be a retro video game is because it's imitative of past Mario Brother games. It's just like if we look at Silent Hill 2, the remake on PlayStation 5. Are you aware technically that's a retro video game? Because it's simply imitating or is a remake of a video game that a lot of you, because it was released in the early 2000s, want to consider to be vintage. So as a result, that remake qualifies the remake of Silent Hill 5 to now be a retro video game as a result. So there is a big difference between vintage and retro, especially when we talk about video games or even action figures and toys, and those terms should never be intermixed. It's no different if we look at toys. Let me give you another example here. There's a lot of companies right now, like Mattel, bringing back Masters of the Universe, the toy line, to a whole new generation of fans, and really, in all honesty, it's selling to older collectors like myself that grew up with that particular toy line originally. But also, Playmates recently did this with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. If you look on the packaging of a lot of these re-released 80s or 90s toy lines, they'll most likely use the term retro. Retro is 100% correct in that analysis because it is imitative of items that were released in the past. Now let's talk about classic, because using the same toy example, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles re-release, sometimes Playmates will refer to that as the classic line. All is what classic means is an outstanding example of a particular style. So if we look at the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles toy line, the re-release, technically the originals were considered classic. They were outstanding for their day, and they were of a particular style. So it's not wrong to call the re-release a classic. It's just like Pac-Man. Pac-Man has stood the test of time. So you will sometimes hear a later version of Pac-Man being called a classic video game of nostalgia and lore, or a retro video game. In that sense, both fit, believe it or not. So this is very important because you really can get lost in the weeds if you're not careful here. But those of you that keep calling vintage video games retro video games, I'm sorry, in most cases, they are not the same. Thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I will see you in another upcoming video.